Milton Wright was the father of Orville and Wilbur Wright. He was born in 1828 on his father's farm in Rush County, Indiana. He worked as a farmhand until he joined the Church of the United Brethren in 1847. He was ordained a minister in the church in 1856. While he was assigned to Harvestville College, which was a United Brethren school, he found his soon-to-be wife, Susan, in 1853. The two married in 1859 and had 7 children between the years 1861 and 1874. Over the years, Milton served as a circuit riding minister. He also was a professor of theology. He also was an editor of the Religious Telescope. The other thing he was elected to be a bishop in his church. His assignments within the United Brethren Church required him to move his family often. The Wrights lived in Dayton, Ohio for more of anywhere else. They also had to move into many locations in Indiana. His responsibilities required that he traveled extensively, sometimes as much as 8,000 miles in a single year. During these travels, Milton kept close with his family through letters. He could be stern at times, but he was also an affectionate and supportive father. He encouraged his sons to be a great person, and this is where the Wright brothers got the most inspiration from to build the airplane. Wilbur Wright was born in 1867. Wilbur was an excellent student and athlete. He completed his degree in Richmond High School in Richmond, Indiana, but he never applied for a certificate. The reason why he didn't do that is because he moved to Dayton, Ohio just before his graduation. In 1885, he took several college preparatory classes at Central High in Dayton, Ohio, with admissions of going to Yale University. But he never attended college. Because his mother was sick, he went and took care of her, but she died in 1889. Orville Wright, born in 1871, was a great student during his elementary school years. But his grades suffered as he grew older because he developed other outside interests. He loved carving and printing from wood cutouts, and he apprenticed himself as a printer during the summer months. After his family moved to Dayton, in 1889, the year his mother died, Orville decided not to return for his senior year of high school. Instead, he began printing his own newspaper called the West Side News. He enlisted his brother Wilbur as his editor. Later, he changed his weekly newspaper to a daily newspaper called the Evening Item. The item folded after just a few months. Orville decided to become a partner with his brother Wilbur in a printing company. Then he decided to build a bicycle repair shop. Then they both made their own bicycle manufacturing company. In 1896, the brothers became interested in innovation. They performed their first aeronautical experiments with kites in 1899. They built their first prototype in the back of their bicycle manufacturing company. Catherine Wright was the only one to finish college in her family, because Wilbur and Orville both didn't go to college. She was the one to get them out into the world and to the bigger crowds. She was the second passenger to be on the plane with Orville. She told them and taught them how to dress up nicely to present themselves very well when they presented their plane to the military and to the government.
Siblings lived in this house, now preserved at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. Their father, Milton, was a clergyman. Their mother, Susan, died of tuberculosis in 1889. Two older siblings left home to start their own families.
The house had no running water, no indoor plumbing, no electricity, no telephone, but it did have books, lots of books.
Wilbur was planning to go to Yale when an accident changed everything.
He was hit in the teeth with a hockey stick playing hockey when he was about 18 and knocked out all his upper front teeth. And he retreated from the world, not going out to do much of anything ever, for 3 years.
He ended up opening a bicycle shop with his brother in 1893. They even designed and hand-built their own brand of bike.
If you were coming in to buy a bicycle from the Wright Brothers, you'd come in this door and you'd come over here and Wilbur or Orville would wait on you.
But in their spare time, the brothers became obsessed with the idea of another form of transportation, flying, reading everything they could find about previous experiments. What was the public view of flying at this point? Was it considered a possibility?
It's impossible. Human beings can't fly, won't fly, ever fly.
Still, the Wrights started building flying machines right in their bicycle shop.
The wonder is that they did everything, not just themselves, but did it here and did it so well.
Starting in 1900, with Catherine managing things at home, the brothers would ship their contraptions to the gusty, isolated dunes of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. There's such a wealth of material here.
And the wealth of material is also representative of their really serious interest in photography.
Their photo collection is now kept at their namesake Wright State University in Dayton. It shows how they started with gliders, which often crashed, finally designing a biplane with an ultralight engine hand-built by one of their shop assistants. Success came on December 17th, 1903. This is probably, as we say, the money shot.
Yes, that's one of the most famous pictures in history. And there's Wilbur running at the side, and Orville's taking off for the first time in all of history to fly, and he's only going to fly 120 feet, and he's only going to be in the air 12 seconds. But they knew immediately after this was over that they could do it, and they were onto something.
And that's where the story stops for most of us. But here, in a cow pasture on the outskirts of Dayton, is where David McCullough says the Wright brothers really invented the art of aviation, testing larger and more powerful planes.
Fly figure eights, everything.
Figure eights, all of that,
and
right
land
here.
and take off.
Meanwhile, the federal government was spending $70,000, a fortune in those days, on this so-called aerodrome, which crashed in the Potomac on takeoff. And no one in Washington seemed to care about what the Wright brothers were accomplishing on their own dime. What happened when they wrote and tried to get the federal government involved?
They were turned down. In fact, they had the door slammed in their face.
But the French, obsessed with aviation, took notice. In August 1908, huge crowds gathered to watch Wilbur Wright take to the air over the town of Lamont.
They went wild, and he was a hero instantly.
And the federal government finally says, aha, when they see that other nations, particularly France, are interested in this
exactly.
contraption.
They woke up. They finally realized, oh, maybe we ought to take a look.
So Orville is commissioned to show his stuff in a series of flights at Fort Myer outside Washington.
First attempt, they returned to Kill Devil Hills and mounted an engine on a new 40-foot, 605-pound flyer with double tails and elevators. The engine drove two pusher propellers with chains on one crossed to make the props rotate in opposite directions to contract a twisting tendency in flight. A Bakeley engine and broken propeller shaft slowed them until they were finally ready on December 14th. In order to decide who would fly first, the brother tossed a coin. Wilbur won the coin toss, but lost his chance to be first to fly when he oversteered with the elevator after leaving the launching rail. The flyer climbed too steeply, stalled, and drove into the sand. The first flight would have to wait on repairs. As you can see in the video, the Wright brothers had to do everything by hand. They got the plane out of the shed and pushed and pulled and put it on the track, as you will see. That big boulder that falls to the base of the metal frame will help the plane pick up speed and be able to go fast enough so that the engine can keep it up in the air, so that the plane can keep flying, as you will see in the video. The process of making the airplane was harder for them than it is now for us. They didn't have the same machines as we do today. They had to build everything by hand in the back of their bike machine shed. They also had to pull and push the plane onto the track that was used so that it would pick up speed, so the motor and the engine will be able to go fast enough and have it be able to fly. What made it go faster was a boulder that was hooked to an end of a rope that would weigh down the rope, and it would pull the plane off the track and would let go once it leaves. Once it did that, it started to fly. At Fort Myer, outside Washington, Orville took up a lieutenant named Thomas Selfridge, but crashed, and Thomas Selfridge, the lieutenant, died, and Orville suffered major injuries in the accident. So today here I have Jordan Buss. And Jordan, my question is, what or how or why do you think the Wright brothers are such an historical figure, and what did they change for the future?
The Wright brothers were responsible for one of the greatest inventions in human history, obviously. And being from the Midwest, I would say we should be pretty proud of that. After all, they did spend most of their formative years in Dayton, Ohio. For those of you out there listening who are considering dropping out, Tanner, while the Wright brothers were really smart, they didn't even get a high school diploma. I read that earlier today on history.com. That blew my mind. That people who were that impactful didn't even have a high school degree, let alone a college degree, let alone a high school degree. I also read that they started looking for ways to invent to improve in the airplane or create the first working airplane after one of their friends died in a glider accident. They clearly, obviously, aviation is the first thing that comes to mind with the Wright brothers. And what I always think of is the military. Our military uses aircrafts extensively in their war tactics. Drones, those are descendants of the original airplane as well. Another thing I think of is just travel. I mean, in those days, I'm sure they didn't even imagine having the sizable aircrafts that we do now. But now we can travel halfway across the world in a matter of hours instead of taking days to go by rail or weeks to go by buggy and horse, or even across oceans on ships. You can just hop on a plane and go where you want, and without Orville and Wilbur Wright, none of that would be possible.
The Wright brothers have been so influential for our planes today. Thanks for watching.
Every time they went up, they knew they were risking their lives. They could be killed. It wasn't just they were brilliant, they were extremely brave. Then they put a motor on the glider, not knowing whether it would work, a motor they built themselves, with propellers that they built themselves. Orville took off at Kitty Hawk on the Outer Banks, North Carolina, on a severely cold day in December. December 17th, 1903, the first time that a human being flew on a motor-driven airplane that succeeded in staying aloft.